So listen to this. Kids these days don't know Ibrahimovic, they only know Zlatan. 573 goals, 32 trophies across 9 different clubs in 7 different countries, and now, if you mention his name, all you'll get from the casual football fan is an awful impression and the most unfunny joke about how oxygen needs Zlatan to survive. They don't understand that Ibra created that persona because he grew up with Bruce Lee, Sylvester Stallone and Muhammad Ali as father figures, while his own father succumbed to alcoholism and his mother ended up in jail. But they can't be entirely blamed for that either. There are at least 2 other people who are at fault for creating this monster. 2 players who humiliated him in every single one of the most important moments of his career, repeatedly showing the world he was just human, forcing him to hold on to this persona until he completely lost himself in it. Look, in 2009, Cristiano Ronaldo was presented by Real Madrid in front of 80,000 fans as their new weapon to bring down a Barcelona squad that may have been the greatest ever assembled. And 21 days after that, it was Ibrahimovic who was being presented in front of 60,000 at the Camp Nou as the direct reply to that. Before that day, aside from Maradona at Napoli, no player had ever gathered even half as many fans as that. Anyone who dared doubt either of them would look completely crazy at the time. Both players looked simply too big to fail. Yet, 7 months later, he and Guardiola were on non-speaking terms. Zlatan was on his way to a season with 34 goal contributions, averaging 1 every 96 minutes. Yet, according to him, then Messi started to talk. He wanted to play in the middle, not on the wings, so the system changed, and I was sacrificed. By April, Ibrahimovic, who had moved to the treble winners in exchange for Samuel Eto'o, hoping to finally get himself a Champions League title, was instead subbed off of both legs against Inter and watched the Cameroonian knock Barcelona out of the competition on his way to a 2nd treble in a row. In his own words, "Once I saw Pep in the locker room, I yelled, 'You haven't got any balls, you can go to hell.' I completely lost it, and the worst is that he didn't say anything back to me. The spineless coward just left and never mentioned it to me again." But after 2 more starts for the club, Ibrahimovic was being loaned out to AC Milan, while Messi and Guardiola immediately won another Champions League title without him. As humiliating as it all was, a year after his debut, the club had triggered his buyout clause without thinking twice. After winning the Serie A with both Inter and Juventus, even if under suspicious circumstances, Ibra had cemented himself as the new king of Italy, becoming the first ever player to win the league title with each of the big 3, even taking the league's Player of the Year award as he brought glory back to AC Milan after 7 trophyless years. Yet, as he blew out the candles on his 30th birthday, he knew his early season promises that he was there to win the Champions League had once again fallen flat as they had gotten knocked out by Tottenham. Even worse, then, thinking Pirlo was too old, AC Milan made one of the biggest mistakes in their history, letting him go to Juventus, and watching as even with Ibrahimovic putting down 35 goals and 12 assists, Pirlo still took the Player of the Year award, eventually flipping it into 3 in a row and jump-starting a run of 10 consecutive league titles for Juve. But still, even after making such a lapse of judgment, AC Milan doubled down and sold Ibra to PSG. After a summer where, despite scoring the goal of the tournament and playing well enough that he made it into the best 11, he still got knocked out of the Euros in the group stage, making sure that despite being his nation's all-time top scorer, he had never made it past the quarterfinals of a major tournament. Suddenly, the 31-year-old had his own fans accusing him of being a sellout who left him behind to rot in order to take some millionaire contract in a retirement league, when, really, as he would eventually confide, "I never wanted to leave Milan. I was happy there. At the end of the season, I made Galliani promise that he wouldn't sell me, but then the call arrived. They put me and Thiago Silva in one package and just told me everything was already done." Not to mention that, as much as you could argue that things were different now that Nasser Al-Khelaifi had taken over, there is a reason he had just made Ibra the 2nd most well-paid footballer on the planet. He had been hired to fulfill Nasser's dream of winning his first Champions League by 2014. And with Zlatan desperate to prove everyone wrong, everyone who had ever downplayed him, who had ever claimed he was nothing but an egomaniac, it was, ironically, delusional enough to believe he could do it. Right off the bat, you could see something had been triggered inside him, not just because he went into his first season by putting down 50 goal contributions, winning PSG their first league title in 19 years and almost leading them straight to the Champions League semi-finals by assisting 2 and scoring another as he desperately tried to take revenge on Barcelona, only to be knocked out on away goals, but because, knowing he had no World Cup legacy to speak of either, throughout that year he went absolutely off with the national team. At one point, showing up in a friendly against England and putting down 4 goals, including a 14-minute hat-trick with an incredible volley, a 35-yard free kick, and arguably the greatest goal ever scored, forcing the same fans who had chanted that he was just a shit Andy Carroll at the start of the match to get up and applaud him, before outright going up to the reporters and telling them that this is for the English media that has always been against me, that says Zlatan doesn't score against English teams, so he can't be a good player. Though, then, the qualifiers ended, he was matched up with Ronaldo's Portugal for the World Cup playoffs and, despite scoring a brace, it watched Ronaldo score a hat-trick to make it all meaningless. In fact, 4 goals across the 2 legs, leading the commentator to lay down a line that would sum up a great part of his career. They say Ibrahimovic likes to call himself God. Well, Ronaldo, he just played like one. And as much as he threw a fit, claiming this had been his last attempt to reach a World Cup, that a World Cup without Zlatan isn't worth watching, nobody cared. And now, the fabled 2014 season, the one where he was supposed to deliver the Champions League, was knocking at his door. Ibra did everything he could. Even with Cavani being thrown into the mix, he refused to let go of his status as the one true star in Paris, so much that by New Year's, he had hit one of the highest goal-scoring peaks of all time, with 33 goal contributions in 18 games, 1 every 44 minutes. For comparison, in CR7's greatest ever season, he averaged 1 every 56. Yet, even if, by the end, he had taken another league title, scored the league's goal of the year, scored 4 against Anderlecht with a hat-trick in 19 minutes and a brace against Leverkusen in the last 16 to put him at the top of the Champions League's goal scorers table. Then, he went out injured only 68 minutes into their quarter-final match against Chelsea and watched them choke their 2-goal lead in the second leg, while Ronaldo blasted straight past him towards the competition's all-time goal-scoring record and took the trophy he had been dreaming of. Worse, the following season was almost a mirrored image. A second injury left him out till November, then his form suffered, and though he got back up to speed just in time to close out the year with 16 goal contributions in 9 matches, taking all 4 domestic trophies, he'd also get a red card right before the quarterfinals, forcing him to watch from the stands as Barcelona put his team down 3-1 before he could even step on the pitch, as now it was Messi who stole his dream away from him. After that, the guy seemed so traumatized that even though the following year would likely be his most dominant ever, with 70 goal contributions in total, only 4 days after he put down 2 goals and assists to make it past Chelsea, almost as if he was already predicting that a 5th consecutive quarter-final elimination was only weeks away, the 34-year-old announced that regardless of what happened next, the only way they could convince him to stay in PSG after that season was if they replaced the Eiffel Tower with a statue of Zlatan. But obviously, not only did that not happen, but the moment he got sent home by Man City a couple weeks later, he entered the list of the Champions League's top 10 appearance makers without ever winning it. As promised, after an embarrassing performance at the Euros that saw him hit only 1 shot on target all tournament and announce his international retirement, the 35-year-old left PSG, but not without insulting the club he had made the most appearances for in his career first, claiming they were never at the level of his talent. However, as most assumed surely this could only be followed by some kind of step away from football, Ibra did the exact opposite, announcing it via tweet before the club itself had done it, that he was joining Man United on a single-year deal, where, even if without Champions League football, now alongside Mourinho, the one manager he had sworn he was willing to die for, he instantly went into business, scoring the winning goal in the Community Shield, a 30-yard strike on his Premier League debut, and a brace on his first ever match at Old Trafford. By February, he had already become the oldest ever player to hit 15 Premier League goals, yet soon after he scored twice to clutch the League Cup final, getting within 6 goals of matching Rooney's best ever tally, despite still having 10 matches left to play. He ruptured his ACL, precisely in the Europa League quarterfinals, being sidelined for 211 days, unable to take part in the one European final of his career, only ever stepping onto the pitch to join the celebrations in his tracksuit. A month later, United would decide to renew his contract regardless, though that would not be the wisest choice. Not only would Ibra embarrass himself by claiming that he was coming back from international retirement to join Sweden for the World Cup, now that they had qualified without him, only for the manager to instantly reject him, but he'd go out of his way to boast about his comeback from injury, claiming that lions don't recover like humans, only to make 2 starts and get sent back to the infirmary for another 3 months, ultimately just agreeing to terminate his contract, leaving United with his tail between his legs, seemingly finally taking everyone's advice of stepping away, taking a move to Los Angeles Galaxy in the MLS, where his alter ego seemed to take over like never before. Ibra arrived in California by taking out a full-page newspaper ad that simply said, "Dear Los Angeles, you're welcome." And right after proving it to his new teammates that the rumors surrounding his character weren't just rumors, by stepping into the locker room for the first time, asking everyone if they believed in God, and then claiming that, if so, that meant they believed in him. Well, then on his first ever match, as his team trailed against their rivals LAFC, the crowd began yelling, "We want Zlatan!" So they subbed him in, and 6 minutes later, he blasted in a volley from 45 yards out to tie the game, and then scored a header in added time to win it, claiming that they asked for Zlatan, I gave them Zlatan. And that was before he watched Sweden make it to the World Cup quarterfinals without him, while his 22 goals in 27 games weren't even enough to get Galaxy into the playoffs. After that, I kid you not, he looked teammate Chris Pontius in the eye and bet him $1,000 that by the end of his second season, he'd have surpassed his career tally, which was then at 50 MLS goals. And you know what's worse? It's that he followed that up with a club record 31 goals in 31 matches, at one point being compared to LAFC superstar Carlos Vela and claiming that he was a Ferrari among Fiats, asking why a player in his prime was even in the MLS, before smacking him with a perfect hat-trick to beat him 3-2, ultimately taking LA Galaxy to the playoffs, scoring to go 1 goal ahead of Chris Pontius in the final game of the season, taking his money and leaving the club by informing the Americans that now you can go back to watching baseball. Okay, listen, I feel like I'm getting pretty repetitive, but he was now 38, had just done 2 years in the MLS, surely he'd have to retire, right? Well, no. Whereas he never seemed too fond of PSG despite those 180 matches, he had seemingly never forgotten the 85 he'd played for AC Milan, and with the way he had left, the way the club had sunk deeper and deeper in the years since his departure, never winning the league again, it was almost as if he felt the two were connected, that AC Milan was home, so he did it. With the club sitting at 11th in the table, he came back and led them on a 5-game winning streak. And just as everyone laughed off his claim that it didn't matter if he had lost his speed, since he could always shoot from 40 yards out, then the pandemic came, and once football got restarted, he put down 11 goal contributions to get through the 10 matches that remained completely unbeaten, straight into 6th place in the European competitions. Despite arriving midway through the season, he had still managed to become the oldest player to ever score more than 10 Serie A goals in a year, but that was nothing. Then he opened his second season with a brace to beat Bologna 2-0, got COVID, missed 3 games, came back for the Derby della Madonnina and scored twice in 3 minutes to take the 2-1 win, and then got his 3rd consecutive brace to tie Roma 3-3. In fact, by late November, as he scored yet another brace to beat Napoli 3-1 at their own stadium, he was yet to play a single league game without scoring. He was 3 games away from matching the league's greatest ever goal-scoring streak, and had managed Stefano Pioli calling him a godsend, while Raiola claimed he was 90% of that team. Even the Swedish national team had gone back on their word and called him up. But then, the injuries came. 2 months on the sidelines followed, and as much as he tried, his form just wasn't the same. By January, as he got sent off with butting Lukaku, everyone could see how much he was struggling to accept what was happening, and inevitably, they succumbed to 2nd place about a month later, even if the man most have deemed as just a locker room signing, at the 3rd highest goal-scoring rate in the league, only behind Luis Muriel and CR7. Yeah. But if the disappointment became almost too much to handle, as he still managed to pick up another injury before the end of the season, ruling him out for 5 months until right after his 40th birthday, stubborn as ever, he insisted this was not over. Scoring on his comeback, somehow managing to maintain a rate of about a goal or assist every 96 minutes all the way up till January, when, miraculously, he got sidelined for another month and a half to not only find his team at the top of the table by the time he recovered, but to watch them hold on to that spot until the 34th match day, when, with Inter beating Roma a few hours earlier, they needed a win against Lazio to take it back. And of course, it was Ibra who came in to assist the winner in the 90th minute to make Milan champions of Italy for the first time in 11 years. Somehow still managing to spice things up, revealing he had been playing through an ACL injury as, in his own words, for 6 months, I was only able to train with the team 10 times, took more than 20 painkiller injections, and drained the fluid from my knee every week. Yet, no matter what, even with 264 days on the sidelines, he still tried to play one more season, scoring the goal that made them the oldest goal scorer in Serie A history in his final match before retiring.